Hi, my name's Phil. I'd like to talk about politics, and in this video I'd like to address a question I've been getting a bit lately, and that is why I'm focusing so much of my time on Reform UK on the channel. Now, the short answer is that they are now the greatest obstacle to a better standard of living and closer social cohesion in Britain. But it is worth going over exactly why I think that, although I don't think Reform UK will overtake the Tories electorally in the short term. I do think they are almost about to do so in the public's mind. But first, for daily political commentary, please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out. So I was talking in my first video today about how one major group of Republicans in America, very much identifying as MAGA Republicans, view the Conservatives as a failure, a busted flush, and that Reform UK are the real party of the right wing. Well, this is the view from America. Plays a little part in the reality of British politics. However, what if people over here start to believe the same thing? After all, some of the criticisms levelled at the Tories by these MAGA Republicans is that the Tories heralded record levels of what they referred to as legal and illegal migration, bankrupted the country and transformed Britain into something weak and unrecognisable. Now think about what the Tories stand for. Economic competence. Well, they're being viewed by people with very similar views as having almost bankrupted the UK. Immigration, anti-immigration, record levels of migration, and, a strong voice on the world stage, looking weak and unrecognisable. And that's their words. I'm not paraphrasing at all. That's their literal words. They further said that their fecklessness, also their word, led to what they call a disaster of a Labour administration, definitely their word, administration. And the Tories were a textbook case of how not to govern. And there is every chance that people in the UK will come to see the Tories like this as well. After all, the Conservatives have always talked about immigration being too high, but privately they understood it generally wasn't. So, they didn't actually bring immigration down. But they got away with it because anyone voting for anti-immigration policies had no other show in town come the election until the rise of Nigel Farage and UKIP, the more effective elements of which are now baked into Reform UK. In attempting to counter the threat, the Tories leaned into immigration even more strongly than before, only they just made the situation way worse, didn't they? So even when the Tories actually seemed to try to bring immigration down, they actually sent it to record levels. So the Tories have basically lost ground on immigration. Impossible to regain it without being in power and somehow producing a different result in government. Because if they ever tried to say, oh yeah, immigration is too high, it's like, weren't you the guys who introduced record immigration? Oh, but are voters going to give them the chance to have another crack at it? While Reform UK and Labour alike are happy to keep reminding people about the Tory record on immigration. In many ways, you might imagine that a better strategy for the Tories might be to lean into other policy areas and not really talk about immigration. But they seem incapable of doing so. They're committing themselves to fighting political battles on immigration battlegrounds, despite the obvious weakness of their record. I mean, never mind bringing a knife to a gunfight. This is like bringing the pea shooter you got free in a copy of the Beano. And Reform UK have been building momentum, not just in the mainstream media where they have a ready voice. They have had a string of defections. The most recent is former Tory donor Nick Candy, the billionaire husband of Holly Valance. He has become Reform UK's treasurer. You know what that means? He's in charge of raising donations for Farage's party. He has personally promised to donate millions and further said that he will raise more money for Reform UK than any political party has ever seen. Now, it is of course possible that Reform UK will fail to live up to their hype in key elections. They may not win many seats in the local elections over the next few years, or the Scottish or Welsh elections in 2026. If they keep failing at the ballot box, then the momentum they're currently building will falter. There's nothing inevitable about the rise of Reform UK here. However, there are a few simple political facts at play. First, the Tories have no credible plan to restore their fortunes. They talk about how, oh yeah, but Keir Starmer brought Labour back from the brink. We could do the same. It's like, yeah, but you're doing it. Like, what did he do? He apologised for the things the public rejected Labour for. Whether you think those things were fair or not, he basically said, yeah, we shouldn't have done that. We're sorry about that and we're going to change. He ruffled a lot of feathers internally. You know, he absolutely prioritised the views of the public, the key important voters. The Tories are not doing any of that. They're still trying to defend their record in government. They're refusing to apologise. And they're so conflict averse, they won't even attack Nigel Farage or Reform UK, much less the toxic elements of their own party. Second, if Labour do badly, then yes, voters, of course, turn to other parties. Like a lot of people do vote consistently. They've always particularly voted the same way. There's another chunk of voters who vote pragmatically. But, you know, there is also an important chunk who won't vote for what they think is not good enough. They're not, you know, they're not going to think, well, which is pragmatically the best choice? You know, is it a bit shit or very shit? You know, it's like, no, that's not, we voted for that, but it's not good enough, so we're going to vote for this other thing instead. There are plenty of voters like that. And that is a problem for Labour because they are now in government. If they don't deliver on expectations, then those voters are going to, there are other parties for those votes to go to. But the Conservatives are no longer clear beneficiaries. Their record is their record. Until they can persuade people that the next record will be different, which at the moment they're not doing, they'd ordinarily only attract dissatisfied votes, sort of centre-right, who are going back to the Conservatives. But they've got another choice now. And just as Labour need time for their policies to bear fruit, the same is true of Reform UK. They could get a lot stronger. They've now got Tim Montgomery working for them on their campaign strategy. They may attract other strategists as well. They've got Nick Candy working on attracting major donations. Donations which would ordinarily have gone to the Conservatives, so it's a double whammy for them. It's more money to help Reform UK promote themselves as the replacement for the Conservatives. Less money going to the Conservatives. In a few years' time, Reform UK may actually have a better campaign and funding operation than the Conservative Party. And although I don't see Reform UK challenging at the next general election, I do see them being given the right-wing platforms in the media, which means that they'll be able to make their arguments with almost zero critical scrutiny in the media, which makes Reform UK a potentially more dangerous force for aggressive politics than the Tories. The Tories are just too weak. Every attack line the Tories use on Labour rebounds on them. That is not the case with Reform UK. Nigel Farage can insist that everything would be marvellous if he were in charge, because he has never been in charge. The Tories are dancing to Farage's drumbeat. Everything the Tories are doing seems to be done to counter Farage, and they're trying to counter him by doing a weaker version of what he is doing. They are also inevitably worrying Labour as well. But there's another reason why I've been and will continue to discuss Reform UK a lot. And I mean a lot. Reform UK are aiming to appeal to people beyond the usual echo chambers. A lot of the people who have supported Reform UK up until now are the sort of people I don't think you're really going to change their minds. But Reform UK are trying to reach out to more normal voters, more pragmatic voters. Now, what a lot of viewers tell me is that the information in many of my videos is sometimes useful in countering discussions that have come up in various social settings. Well, over the next few years, you may come across people echoing Reform UK talking points if you haven't already. It's important to have a few facts at your fingertip for when that happens. It also does no harm to make sure there's plenty of ridicule material for when they expose either their stupidity or hypocrisy. Because when people are voting for a party, they're voting for two things. There's the policies, but there's also the competence. Some people are aware that just because a party has certain policies doesn't mean they'll have the competence to carry them out. For example, recently I talked about how Nigel Farage made a big song and dance about milk in a hotel. He was pointing out, oh, he's semi-skilled. That's left-wing milk, that is. That's woke. Won't have it. All I want is some proper milk. Why can't I have some proper milk? But people spotted on the video that he did that there was full-fat milk there. He just tried to hide it from shots, but he didn't quite succeed. He's not a great impromptu cameraman, right? So he half-arsed his imaginary culture war. Things like this should be called out. Ultimately, if this channel is to have value, a big part of that value needs to be adding points of view and calling out lies. See, opinions are opinions, but opinions are based on facts. But if the facts aren't true, then the opinion is invalid. And for most of my life, it was the Tories who were the worst at twisting facts to draw spurious conclusions. All political parties do it to an extent, but most at least see it as a necessary evil, at least to doing some good for people, and some, go too far. but they at least are motivated by, well, this will do good for people. The Tories aren't interested in that. They saw it as a way to get ordinary people to vote against their own interests. Well, now Reform UK are doing so as well, and they're currently doing it better than the Tories. In fact, in a year or two, we may well find that Reform UK is the preferred mouthpiece for the billionaires rather than the Conservatives. Where will that leave Badenoch's Tories? But finally, really easy to call out the Conservatives these days. And I'll still have to do that because they came second. So they are automatically included in every political and current affairs programme. They'll be interviewed all the time. So I'll have to still also keep countering what the Tories are saying. But every single policy that Badenoch is attacking on the part of the Labour government is either her party's policy, just continued by Labour, or the results of her party's actual policies, even by their own standards, were way worse. She's literally attacking a policy that will get better results than her own policies. They have absolutely no way of attacking Labour right now. So terrible were they in government on every level. Reform UK can be holier than thou because they've never been put in charge. So in some people's minds, oh, you say that, but they're not tested. We should put them to the test. Now, hopefully they will never be put to the test, but only if arguments can be countered. A few years ago, the Tories had the chance of burying Reform UK before they even got started. They failed to do so. They actually fed them. So now we're stuck with them. They're here, and we can no more ignore them than you would ignore a mugger with a knife to your chest just because it's uncomfortable. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, you can join for memberships. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.